Jai Prabhuji. We are our fifth class in the course about the book Experimenting with the Truth. And we are continuing with the topic of the master-disciple relationship and the specific article that explains what is the master-disciple relationship. This is our second class about this article. So let's give a short overview about what we spoke in the previous class, what we met already regarding this relationship that Prabhuji shares with us. So in the previous class, we saw Prabhuji's words that explain that there are certain things in life that are not meant to be understood in the intellectual level, but to be experienced, and that the master-disciple relationship is among those things in life. So we understood that to touch what it means, we must get to the level of the experience, of the feeling. And this is relevant not just to disciples in this specific relationship, but obviously we are reading this book and listening to this course, it's relevant to all of us. To get it, we need to listen with the level of our experience, our feeling, to try and grasp the essence of it. The second point that we mentioned in the previous class, that Prabhuji tells us that this is not something that is established, this relationship. It's not something that is planned and there is some agenda and times and schedule and then we form this relationship. But it's an occurrence, it happens exactly like a love story, which is also relevant to the previous point that we mentioned. It's not meant to be understood. It's not something that is planned. It's not calculative. It's not on the level of the mental calculations, but it's a happening, an experience. And then the third point, Prabhuji tells us, it is not a relationship, because we speak about an encounter in which unity occurs. Prabhuji explains that in relationship, the existence of the two entities needs to be maintained in order for us to form a relationship. And Prabhuji gives a few beautiful examples how meetings are no longer relationship, meaning that examples of meetings in which the two entities become one entity, and this is why they don't have a relationship but a unity. And the examples that Prabhuji gives are light and darkness. They can never live together, light and darkness. Only light will remain. Wisdom and ignorance, they will never live together because the wisdom will remove the ignorance. And a river that merges into the ocean, no longer relationship. Go find the river inside the ocean. It is impossible. There is only ocean left. And Prabhuji says the master-disciple encounter, love story, relationship, it is the same. We still call it relationship because obviously on the dual plane there is a relationship between two entities. But what really happens, Prabhuji tells us, is not a relationship, but it's oneness, it's unity, it's togetherness. If there's no longer togetherness, there is no longer master-disciple relationship. This is the definition of this relationship. The fourth point, Prabhuji shares with us the definition of the word guru in Hinduism, which beautifully includes this principle that we mentioned of the meeting between darkness and light. And the meaning of it is that this person, the guru, is the one that removes the darkness, because it's an encounter between darkness and light. So guru means darkness, ru means light, and together it's the one who disperses the darkness. Then we spoke about how Prabhuji explains to us that different than the relationship in the dualistic plane, when two entities are maintained, as we say, in this relationship, because there is union, there is unity, because of the consciousness in which the master is established, which is of our existence transcendentally different than the egoic identification that currently we perceive as we are, the disciple, in this relationship, I mean the interaction in the world, cannot find someone to interact with, to form a relationship with, because he will always meet this absence. So Prabhuji says the guru is established in the awareness of reality transcendentally to the egoic identifications. The disciple, on one hand, he touched it. So he has some awareness of something that is transcendental to the egoic identification, which is the reason of his being in this relationship all the time. Again, when this vanishes completely, God forbid, it means their relationship does no longer continue. Because this is the reason for this relationship, the recognition of the transcendence of the disciple in the presence of the master and in the interaction with the master. But the disciple, at the same time, he is on the dualistic plane. He is not established in this awareness. So he is in between. So this is why in this relationship, the disciple will meet no one. He will be pulled. And this is something we're going to speak about in this class. He will be attracted to this presence because he recognizes himself, his freedom, his bliss. But he's still not there. So he has a path to go. So he's in between. So we compare this relationship to the mundane relationship. We said in this interaction, in this relationship, the essence of it is very different than the relationship on the dualistic plane, because on the dualistic plane, which is what all of us are familiar with in all relationships that we have, the basis of the relationship are our egoic identification. This is what creates this relationship. So first, I identify as myself, as Swami Durgananda, and second, I have relationship with all kind of personalities, all kind of situations. But the basis of every relationship is my identification with an entity. And this is true, of course, to all of us. In the case of the master-disciple relationship, it is not the case. The opposite. The relationship is based on recognition of something different than the egoic identification from the side of the disciple. And of course, from the side of the master, it is completely based on being established in totally different awareness and not based on the egoic identification. Prabhuji tells us that in mundane friendship, regular friendship, the nourishment of each other's ego is fundamental. It's the definition of friendship. It's what creates the friendship. There is no point for us to stay in a friendship if the other individual is not kind to me, to what I identify as Swami Durgananda, is not supporting, is not listening, is not beneficial. If it's just a disturbance, there will be no friendship. This is how we choose our enemies in a way, right? And Prabhuji says, in the relationship with the master, the case is totally different. Because the master is not kind to this entity, to the egoic identification. He is not a good friend in that sense. Just the opposite. He is disturbing. He must disturb us. But the reason for his disturbance is him being a very good friend of us, not of the egoic identification. To the extent that he is willing to face our opposition, our resistance, which is not comfortable. It's not what we seek from individuals. The master is taking these unpleasant circumstances of him or her telling the truth, trying to reveal to us the truth. So the master also does not enjoy in this relationship in many cases, because we are not always so open and quick to understand and to remember what is the context of this relationship. But the master is such a good friend that he will be loyal to this, because this is the essence of this relationship. We can forget. The disciple can forget why he started this relationship, why he entered. The guru will never forget. He will always reveal the truth. So he is not a good friend to our ego, but he is the best friend of us. And he will always remain the best friend of us, no matter what we will do. Another principle that we mentioned in the previous class that I want us to remember as we continue forward, to take with us. This is why we review the principles, so we can absorb them, remember them, and continue to meet more and more aspects that Prabhuji present to us in this relationship. So another aspect is the aspect of the Chaitya Guru. Prabhuji explains to us that the Chaitya Guru is the divine in us, the Guru in us, the guidance in us, the truth that is guiding us. And that when we don't have access or direct access to this Chaitya Guru, we need the help of the external Guru in the world. Prabhuji presents the terms Diksha Guru and Siksha Gurus. We said Diksha Guru is the Guru that gives us initiation. This is, in most cases, the personality on whom we talk when we speak about the master-disciple relationship. We speak about the eternal spiritual master that guides us to awareness of reality, we can say. And Prabhuji also mentions the Siksha Gurus, which are teachers on the path that can guide us on specific fields, Siksha Gurus. And both of them are our agents that will help us to connect with the Chaitya Guru. And the importance of this is that while it is very important to understand that it is not easy to connect with the Chaitya Guru, and the mind can be very deceiving. So if we care about our bliss, liberation, true seeing, we want to be very suspicious and careful. Because this is all the past, the confusion. To get out of the confusion, to see clearly. So while in many cases, we don't most likely have free access to our guidance within. And this is why it is beneficial to be exposed to words that come from realized beings that can describe to us the reality. To be receptive, not just to our mind, but to truths that can come to us from other personalities due to their own path and realization of reality. It is also important to understand at the same time that the purpose of this relationship with the Master is not to stay bound and dependent on external guidance of the agents, but to eventually connect with the wisdom inside us, with our own wisdom. Because the Master will always tell us this truth that he is exposed to is the truth of all of us. It's not something that he has and he or she has and need to supply to us constantly. But their attempt is to connect us to our own wisdom and to be, in a way, liberated from the need of external guidance. True disciples will never want to be liberated from the togetherness with the Master, separate from this love story, because it is a love story. They will want to continue and serve and connect and be united with their Guru forever. But the dependence on this personality and on the external guidance is going to decrease if the path is genuine. If the Master is genuine and the disciple is genuine, this dependency will decrease and decrease. And the aim of this relationship that we need to understand is not to stay bound, but to be independent. So we are moving into further content in the article. And the next point that we are going to meet is a very important principle in the retro-progressive yoga. We will find it in a few places, repeating in different angles, sometimes with a little different light, but the principle is conveyed over and over by Prabhuji. And this is the comparison between the student-teacher relationship and the master and disciple relationship. And this comparison is very important for us in order to understand the master-disciple relationship and in general the retro-progressive yoga and Prabhuji and what is it talking about. And the beauty in it is that as we study and listen to Prabhuji's words, explaining to us about this difference, we will naturally be pulled to exercise it, what he's talking about. Prabhuji gives us words, but he keeps on telling us, don't take my words in the same way that you used to take words from your teachers and maybe from other elements in the material pursuit, in the material life. We will meet it also further in this article. But now we meet this relationship between master and disciple and student and teacher, and Prabhuji will give us the principle so we can contemplate and understand what are the essential differences between the two. Prabhuji says that a student is coming to the teacher with a clear agenda. He knows what he wants. He didn't know to cook before, now he wants to know to cook. He didn't know history before, now he wants to know more facts, more names, clear agenda. Depending on the class that he enters and the specific interaction, he knows what he is expecting. The object is clear. But Prabhuji says in the case of the disciple, this is very different. The disciple has an urge, but he's going into the mystery. He's going into the unknown. This is why he's a disciple. As we said in the first meeting with the master, we meet a point in us that we are longing to. A point that is the fulfilling of all our desires. This is what happens in the encounter with the master. We feel this is what we wanted all our life. We need nothing else but this. But then there is a long path that we need to make it our reality because we are still not there. We said the disciple is in between. So he's still not experiencing this reality, but he's pulled to it. He's touched by it. He's attracted by it. And he transforms his life following this desire, this one desire. But he does not know. So the point of comparison here, the student knows what he wants, the disciple does not know what he wants. Prabhuji tells us the student is again occupied with the word, with the information. The disciple is more in a state of being, of experiencing, which is essential in understanding the retro-progressive yoga. And all this wisdom that Prabhuji gives to us, what it's all about. There are many words here, but it's not about words. We said we can know all of Prabhuji's words by heart and not grasp anything of the retro-progressive yoga. And we can listen to one sentence or even not listen at all and be in this presence and connect with Prabhuji and unite in this experience that is not the words. So let's read this comparison. People often think that the master-disciple relationship is like the teacher-student relationship. Despite some similarities, there is an enormous difference. Students know that they are searching for information. Disciples, while experiencing a strong urge, do not know the object of their longing. They seek the truth or God without knowing what these words mean. They aspire to the mystery. They long to lose themselves in the unknown. Students desire to know about. Disciples want to be. Students have a clear goal because their impetus is born from the mind. But disciples' motivation knows no words since it emerges from a place prior to the mental plane. The relationship between a teacher and a student is intellectual in nature. It develops at a mental level. It is a transmission of information intended to give knowledge. The encounter between master and disciples, on the other hand, is existential in nature. It is not about studying or learning, but about being. In the scripture Pirkei Avot, it is said that Moses received the Torah from Mount Sinai. The master may be a person, but could also be a place where our encounter with consciousness happens. This encounter does not happen on the physical or mental plane, but on the spiritual one. While students seek information, the disciple seeks a complete transformation. Disciples have recognized their ignorance and seek to realize their true nature. Teachers teach subjects, while masters teach themselves. True disciples want to learn their masters, who are the essence of the self. The teacher imparts knowledge, while the guru is committed to complete epistemological liberation. Pedagogues try to expand the student's storehouse of information, but masters guide us toward a total emancipation from any theory, idea, concept, or conclusion. So this was this essential comparison between the two levels of acquiring knowledge, acquiring information. There is some similarity, there are two personalities, there is knowledge being transmitted, there are words can be spoken either in lecture or book or any interaction, but yet we speak about completely different experience, and it's important for us to understand, and we will go deeply further in the article and understand why it is so important. And there is one term here in this comparison that Prabhuji mentioned that I would like to take a look at. Prabhuji says that the disciple aspires for epistemological liberation, an interesting term that made me break my head a little bit over what does Prabhuji mean. So epistemology, as we know, is the theory of knowledge, is the, we can say, different theories that were developed by different personalities who thought very deeply and tried to analyze this important topic. How do we know what we know? And how can we determine that something is truth? They explored into the ways to acquire knowledge and debated what is a valid means to establish a piece of knowledge as truth and what is invalid means. And there are different opinions about what is the true means to acquire knowledge. What is knowledge? And what Prabhuji tells us here is something very interesting. He says the disciple aspires for liberation from all that. For liberation from theories and instructions or guidelines how to judge and acquire what I know. And in my opinion, what Prabhuji means is that the disciple aspires to see, to be liberated from any external means, definition, words, personality that can indicate to us what is knowledge, because this will be mediation. This will be an agent, even in our own mind. I need to stop and think, hey, I think the sky is blue, but let me contemplate. Is it my true knowledge? How do I know? And then I can maybe go to science and discover a different reality. But at another situation, maybe my own experience is much more important than what I was told from the external world. So in this attempt to analyze, how do I know what I know? How to decide what I accept as knowledge? Is it my own experience? Is it external information? Is it scientific proofs? Is it other people, my parents, my society? So many questions. And this is why personalities gave to it a lot of thought. It is not easy questions to analyze. Prabhuji tells us the disciple aspires to liberate from all this because he wants to see directly, not to need any argument that will convince him that this is the way to accept true knowledge. And of course, to get there, we sometimes need to go through epistemology and give a lot of thought about how do we know what we know and decide on our means for acquiring knowledge until we will see directly. This is why we have such a profound and beautiful science of epistemology. We find it in Advaita Vedanta and many other philosophies and paths. Great study about the ways to know that help us a lot on the path. Just to think about how do I know what I know? It is a very important question in every human being's life, this analysis. But the aspiration is not to stay there. But Prabhuji says the aspiration is for epistemological liberation. No need for theories. And if you see the next sentence that Prabhuji will say just after he mentioned this term, the teacher imparts knowledge while the guru is committed to complete epistemological liberation. Pedagogues try to expand the student's storehouse of information, but masters guide us toward a total emancipation from any theory, idea, concept, conclusion, to freedom. And now we are going further into the meaning of the student attitude that we all have. This is what we want to reflect upon, because we have this student attitude when approaching knowledge. We have it not just from school, but from any interaction with the external world. Of course, the media, parents, everywhere, all society. Any interaction with the world, we are receiving information and influenced by information that come to us from other entities. This is how human beings grow and develop in this world. It's part of the experience of human beings. We receive a lot of information and we are influenced by this information. Most likely, most of us influenced by this information in the same way that the student does in student-teacher relationship, and not as disciple does in the master-disciple relationship, essentially. Essentially, I mean that not necessarily the disciple who engages in a relationship with the master, from personal experience I can say, will be 24 hours in an attitude of a disciple. Most likely, most of the time, we have the student attitude. But disciples engage in this relationship with the desire to remove the student attitude. And for this, we need to reflect upon it and to recognize it and to see it in order to let the disciple attitude be born in us. So Prabhuji further goes into the student attitude, and he speaks about the fact that the student, we said that he is focused on the words, on the information. And Prabhuji tells to us about the words, that words are bridges. They are not insignificant. They can help us a lot, and they help us a lot in life. But the problem in the student attitude is that we are satisfied with the words, and we are not going to where the words can lead us. Prabhuji says that words are bridges. They can be bridges to experiencing, to connecting, to understanding, to listening. But if we take the bridge and build a house on the bridge, we will not get to the destination that the bridge leads us to. And disciple wants to get to the destination, continue with the word. It's not enough that I know the dates and the names and all the information, because this is not my purpose when I engage in this relationship and when I come in touch with any spiritual wisdom. Reading a book, watching a lecture, it's the same principle. We come in a way as disciples because we want to receive, to absorb something that is transcendentally to the level of the words that we are used to from school. Again, we said when the student enters to the class, he does not interested in the presence of the teacher. Quite the opposite. He wants to focus on the words that are said in order to maintain and remember them tomorrow. This is the purpose of his coming to the class and of the teachers coming to this class. In master-disciple relationship, the situation is very different. So Prabhuji tells us again about the student attitude, that the words are bridges, and the problem with the student attitude is that we are staying satisfied with the words and therefore we are remaining empty-handed. We don't get the essence to where these words lead us. And he explains that all of us have a storehouse of information from the past. We have a lot of known. We have a lot of words that we already received, and we accumulate and we maintain them. All our ideas, opinions about different things in life, perception about ourselves, how we see life, how we see others, are a lot of words, information that we already concluded We're not examining. We stopped examining them and we accept them as truth. And Prabhuji says all these words, all the known, all the past, does not allow us to come in touch with reality. Because we have answers to everything. So we don't need to check. We have answers to what is God, if there is God, if there is not God, what is reality. So we don't need to pay attention, not to God and not to reality. We don't need to listen. We already know. We already decided. Maybe I'm atheistic, maybe I'm agnostic, maybe I'm religious, maybe I think Krishna is God, maybe I think HaKadosh Baruch Hu is God, maybe I think God is everything, Brahman, nature, whatever it may be. Concepts. It's not the reality. And Prabhuji says when we have all these concepts stored, and when we are satisfied by this concept, we cannot be in touch with the reality as it is. So our efforts in this transition from students to disciples, we will not eliminate all these concepts in one day. They exist in us. They are us. All the past is in us. All the known is in us. But the attempt of the disciple is, even though I have all these ideas, let us now pay attention and listen to maybe some other reality that can be revealed to us. Let us open. And for this, Prabhuji always will tell us we need to be present, we need to be in the experience, we need to be listening, we need to be receptive in order to let something new come to us. When disciples find their masters, they have to embark on a transformative process of liberation from the past and the known. Like dust on a mirror, the known prevents us from reflecting reality. Covered by theologies, philosophies, and scriptures, we cannot reflect the divine. Being part of a certain ism, we project ideas and concepts upon reality instead of seeing it. The worship of God is replaced by the worship of ideas about God. Idols of stone and bronze do not pose any real danger. True idolatry is to worship man-made idols. Logically, the search for our own ideas cannot lead us to unveil something real. Ideas and words are symbols, but they are not the thing itself. Although symbols can be bridges to the unmanifested plane, there is a danger to remain trapped in them. In order to access truth, reality, and God, it is imperative to destroy our thought idols and empty ourselves completely of any concept. Next, Prabhuji talks about an aspect in this relationship that is relevant to those of us who developed already the attraction to the master. It's not relevant to those of us who still don't have this attraction. We can skip to the next paragraph. But those who are attracted to this presence and therefore attracted to this personality, whoever he may be, need to remember, Prabhuji reminds us, that we should not be attached to the person. And this is a true master will always remind over and over and over to his or her disciples. This presence is not from a specific personality, but it's the presence of the truth, of everyone's true self. So the master will not want us to get attached to him as a person or to her as a person. As we spoke in regard to the point of the Chaitya Guru. The master wants us individual, independent, stand on our own feet. But the attachment is typical, is a must. If there's no attachment, there is no, it means the encounter didn't happen. We're attracted to it, we're attached to it, because it's our true self. We want more and more of it in a way. So it is typical and it's beneficial also. Because any interaction with this personality will lead us beyond the relationship, into the unity. Every interaction. So Prabhuji says to the true disciples, in my opinion, or to those who have attraction to a specific personality, not to attribute it to the personality, but to continue onward into the space that the Master offers. Prabhuji says the Master is a void, is an absence. This is why we are attracted again. We're attracted to ourselves. And a true Master will continue to use this attachment, this attraction, and lead us to ourselves, to be free from him and from her, from this dependency. But this will always be an ongoing process. The disciple will be always more and more attracted and will not want to get liberated from this attachment. But he will not manage to be in touch. This is the beauty of this relationship. Because we said the Master is nobody. So the more we want to get attached, we are unable to get attached. We only find more and more ourselves, more and more alone. But Prabhuji explains here this principle that is important to understand, and maybe also if we look at it from outside, not from inside this experience, our intimate experience, but if we want to understand intellectually what does it mean, it is good that we understand that the point is not to be attached to the personality. What we see outside maybe as worship and giving flowers to the Master and wanting to do his will and kiss his feet we see in India and so many things, are external expression for this attachment that originates from our desire to be free, not just from the Master but from anything. But in the relationship with the Master, true disciples will find the freedom. They will not want to get liberated because the Master will always supply the open space, not the dependency, not the bondage. The window lets us see the landscape, but the trees and hills do not belong to the window. It is only a hole that lets us see outside. Similarly, the Master is a void through which we can glimpse freedom. The Guru is not a person, but an absence that reveals the mountains. The Guru does not allow disciples to attribute the beauty of the landscape to him or to her. Disciples often get attached to the individual that they consider their savior or Messiah. However, the Master will not accept this harmful attitude. Disciples must relate to the Master as an open door to the truth that invites them to step through. So Prabhuji warns us from this attachment. This attachment, as I said, can be very favorable. And it is favorable. But at the same time, as disciples, we need to be careful not to limit the experience with the Master to the level of the relationship with him as a person, as we said before. Because Prabhuji told us this is not a relationship. This is a union, an encounter. We meet ourselves. And as disciples, we must always go back to this consciousness and not forget that this situation currently with the Master is temporary. And we will not forever be with the Master, with this inspiration, with these words of wisdom. We want this wisdom to be our seeing. And for this, we need to use the interaction with the Master with remembrance of the context all the time. And by remembering the context, we will be more aware of who the Master is. Once we enjoy the relationship with him, due to his establishment in the self, we are attracted, we are enjoying, but limiting it to this specific experience, we are also limiting our perception of who is the Master, as we spoke in the previous class. As Arjuna told Krishna, "Forgive me, I did not see you for who you are," because he limited him to being his cousin and friend, and maybe very wise and divine personality, but still he was limited to the relationship between the two entities in time and place, to the attachment. And Prabhuji tells us that we should not stay stuck on the level of the attachment. But yet, at the same time, he tells us that because the Guru will never let us stay attached, because the Guru is absence, as we said, we will not meet a personality. We can be attached, but we will never be able to connect with some entity. This attachment will lead us more and more to attachment to the truth, to ourselves, to freedom. So the Guru is the path. He is not an entity with whom we want to form a relationship, but this void that we will find through this attachment, through this relationship, is our path, the space. And this is why Prabhuji quotes here scriptures that tell us that the Guru is the way, the Guru is the path. So we don't want to put off this attachment. We want to transcend it, to expand it, to elevate the consciousness. Not to run away from the attachment, but to go deeper into the attachment towards the origin of this attachment. And this will take us to our own path, our own individual growth, development, opening our eyes. If we will go into the master, into the interaction with the master, every word that we hear from the master, whatever we can get from the master, if we will open and listen to it without being attached to the personality, this will be our path to our own liberation. So let's read. The spiritual master is not only a guide, but the path itself, as indicated by Maitri Upanishad.
Udhartum arhasiti andhodapana, sthobeka ivaham asmin samsare, bhagavam stvam no gati stvam no gatihi.
May you liberate me in the cycle of repeated birth and death. I am like a frog in a dark well. Your divine grace, you are our path, you are our path. Maitri Upanishad 1:7. A very similar concept is presented in the New Testament, John 14:6. I am the way, the truth, and the life, replied Jesus. Nobody reaches the Father except through me. But Prabhuji tells us the master is the path, is the way, is an open space that can take us into ourselves, into the mystery. But he cannot walk for us. The master is the path, but he is not the walk. And this is all in our hands alone. So in a way, when we meet the master, when we meet wisdom that is coming from personalities who realize themselves, this is an enormous opportunity. Especially when we manage to touch it, to have this encounter that we spoke about, this unity, when we feel for a second that this is all that we wanted in all our lives. This is the fulfillment of all our desires. This is what we want. What we meet there is a great opportunity. Opportunity, not by chance it is called in Hinduism, to fulfill the goal of life. All that anyone can ever want is to be in truth, in peace, in liberation. There's nothing can be higher than this, in seeing the reality. However, we meet an amazing opportunity that the universe was so kind to bestow upon us. And yet, we did not do even one step. All the past that Prabhuji calls the transformative process of emancipation from the past, more or less, these are the words, is in our hands. And if you remember when we visited in the first class, I believe, Prabhuji's explanation about his own life journey, we saw how there was a path, and this path made him accommodated for him the realization of reality. But even in Prabhuji's life, we see a long path, the transformative process, and also in the definition of what is retroprogressive yoga, we met the same principle. It is an involutionary process. We see a process, but what is this process? To be currently, in this moment, all this process. So also us, all of us, when we meet the truth, and when a disciple meets the truth, he meets the opportunity. In a way, he meets the end, the goal, but he's still not established in it. And to get to it, now all of us will have a long process of transformation because we are still the past. And Prabhuji tells us this walk, this process is not something that the Guru can do on our behalf. The Guru is the path, is a space, is opportunity, is wisdom, is the self. We have it in front of our eyes. But only we can take this opportunity, can pave our way, and this will necessarily will have to be our own individual journey, each one based on his or her particular mass of past, of knowledge, of ideas, of concepts, of limitations. And of course, this also means that we might not take this opportunity. It is not a promise. It is an opportunity. But everything now depends on us. How we take this opportunity every second on this path. The master cannot do any step, any second on our behalf. We need to walk each and every step on the path. And the sad news is that we can definitely meet such opportunities and not take advantage. And most likely all of us do receive a lot of opportunities from life, but not always we are able to benefit from them and to take them to the maximum. And this is why it is so important for us to contemplate about the attitude of the disciple if we want to get the maximum wisdom out of words of masters. Because if we will get it or not, it's not only depending on how the words are enlightened or the master is enlightened, but very much, and maybe only, from the point that we already come in touch with this knowledge, now it's only to do with our receptivity, how much we will be able to grasp and to get. Masters fulfill the role of spiritual parents. Just as we receive our physical bodies from our biological parents, through the master we are born in spirit. Our mother is the door to the world, yet the master is the door to the plane of consciousness. However, no one can pass through the gateway in your place, not even the master. Only you can cross the threshold. And now we are going to jump into a different paragraph in this article, something we did not do so far, and I'm not sure if we will do again, but here I believe it's justified because the Prabhuji speaks about exactly the same point of the necessity of us to open the eyes. The master cannot open our eyes. He can enlighten our eyes, but we will need to open the eyes and be willing to stare and see. It is very important for disciples to understand the role of masters. Masters can indicate where the water is, but disciples' thirst will remain unquenched unless they are willing to drink. Although gurus can teach disciples to spread their wings, disciples are the ones who must fly. The master supports and motivates, but cannot become self-realized on behalf of the disciple. Just like traffic police, masters can give directions, but it is not their job to bring you to your destination. The last point that we are going to visit in this article is that Prabhuji tells us that the master-disciple relationship is necessarily not a democratic one. And I think here we need to put aside a little past, a little known, because the word democracy has a very good reputation, most likely in our known world, and this is for sure also for good reasons, but maybe also out of reasons that are not necessarily always true and not necessarily coming from our own contemplation, investigation, and thinking about the reality in a democratic way. So, what Prabhuji tells us, and I believe what he takes us, is to a very democratic journey to consider what is democracy and if this is always the ultimate preference, and to show us that in many cases we would not favor democracy. And it is not a problem. It makes sense not always to favor democracy. What Prabhuji tells us is that in many situations in life, common situations, he just gives 2 examples, but there are so many others, we will for sure prefer that somebody else will make a decision for us because we recognize him as an expert in a specific field. And he gives the example of a patient and a doctor. Obviously, when we come to the doctor as patients, the doctor is the knower. The doctor is the one that we come to him to know what he thinks about our health, to give us test results, to give us recommendations, medicines, diagnosis, etc. There is maybe some point for some negotiation and discussion, but our position has much less value in terms of the ultimate beneficial route in order to bring us to more health. We are less knowledgeable. We are afraid to choose. The doctor will not be occupied a second after we left his office or her office with what we are going to do. But he will not be too much interested in the discussion with us about our opinions. Because this is not the nature of this relationship. We come to get from him knowledge and guidance. So this is an example of a relationship that is not democratic. He will not force his opinions or her opinions on us, but there will not be democratic discussion because our opinion is not too much interesting. It's not too much relevant. And Prabhuji gives a different example, another example of a pilot. The example of a pilot, I think, conveys to us something that is very delicate and profound. So the pilot needs to be in full control. Prabhuji says, of course, if we are in airplane, the pilot is the controller. There will be no discussion, and the pilot is going to be probably much more strong about it even than the doctor. He will have no time to listen to us. We will not see the pilot because he needs full control, full focus, because he's the only one who knows how to drive this vehicle in the sky. And I think that Prabhuji gives this example because in the master-disciple relationship as well, we speak about something that is very profound and delicate, that requires a lot of expertise to move it in the right direction. And in this relationship between the master and the disciple, we said how the master is in the reality, the disciple does not see. The master is necessarily the expert one. The master sees not just a specific situation on which the disciple can have so many opinions, and we always have opinions. There's not a question about it. But the master remembers we are in an airplane. We have certain goal. He sees the obstacles. He sees the risks. And he's very focused on where are we heading. The disciple most likely, in most cases, forgets the entire context. And this is why, of course, this relationship cannot be democratic. Because for the master, not even for a second, there is something that is not relevant to the liberation of the disciple in this relationship. He will always guide us. He always flies this airplane. Prabhuji says in the end of this paragraph that the one who is sleeping cannot choose to wake up. He is sleeping. This is the point. This is the origin point that causes both the master and the disciple to be in this dialogue. The fact that the disciple sleeps. And so necessarily from now on, the one who can determine the favorable conditions for the disciple to wake up is only the one who is awake, and for sure not the one who is sleeping, because he is now dreaming about all kinds of realities that are not in this context of the desire to wake up. Democracy might be the most suitable system for modern society, but in certain situations, we need to choose other alternatives. An airplane must be flown by a pilot and not based on the democratic vote of the passengers. Doctors should often ignore the preference of their patients. Likewise, a transformative process cannot be unfolded democratically. Disciples should not expect the work with the master to be democratic, because someone who is sleeping cannot choose whether to wake up or continue sleeping. Jai Prabhuji.